Hi. So, this is Tormod, and first in this video I would like to state that I am not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I am an ordinary guy working my way through my schizophrenia and exposing what I find walking through my schizophrenic mind and so on, and simply explaining the solution that I find when I am exploring, forgiving, embracing, and uniting, and accepting and forgiving and changing myself from being the suffering schizophrenic. So today, with that said, that I'm not a doctor or a scientist, I'm an ordinary guy working my way through my schizophrenia into solution, into responsibility. Today I want to talk about suicide and those kinds of mindsets and thinking of suicide, of ending one's life, and that kind of emotional, complicated thinking and you might say psychology and behavior and so on. I worked my way through the depth of such a mindset, voice in the head mostly it's been for me. My symptoms have played me for a voice in the head, and I've been hearing voice. My symptoms have been that I've had voice in my head from personalities living within me, of myself, that are very ingrained with the schizophrenic design of a confused and mixed up and blended, you might say, salad bowl of personalities. With the schizophrenic, there is very much a chaotic mixture of polarized personalities within us, the mind, the being, and so on. With this marginalized, polarized, split and divided and conquered and beaten and bruised and world full of friction and separation and war, you might say, within the schizophrenic living of mind, of an internal war, of course, then within a definition of war, there have been such kinds of thinking, such kinds of voice in the head, and that kind of reason for me being in mental hospital, and so on and so on. So, looking at psychiatry from 15 years back until today, very little have actually assisted me structurally from doctors or psychiatry in the larger picture. Why that is because I think that it's a plethora of reason why psychiatry is such a vague field of interest, meaning there are so many loose and non-consistent and unstable and separated and polarized ideas of what is psychiatry, what is psychology, what is the mind, what is God, what is thought, what is ego. There is so much. What is consciousness, what is expanded consciousness. There is so much separation and different opinions on the mind, on what is ego and denial, and if you look at the world on YouTube or on the web generally, there is very many different opinions and beliefs on what is what and what goes where. So that is why, most people can agree that the human has a mind, a sort of a box mentality that is sort of governing our reality. So within that, uh, recognizing that human beings carry a mind box unit that is sort of governing the reality. That sentence right there should be enough to make us really, really want to wake up and face ourselves as the mirror, because the box mentality, the matrix, the system, the life, the everything that we see is rooted back at self. Abracadabra, I create my own reality. So, that being said, um, I was able to learn more about my schizophrenia, about voice in the head, symptoms, why do we have suicidal thoughts? Why do some people commit suicide? What is it all about? Why do we have this mind? Why do we have all this thinking, this voice and pain and disturbance of mind? Why? Simply why? So, that is some of what we at Destiny take very, very serious and, work every day to become, you might say, day by day, more and more responsible for the self perspective within that. And me, within walking a process with Destiny Group, I also strive and do challenge myself to be as responsible as I can be in my everyday life, and to uh, be responsible to forgive and unite and change myself from the old suffering, um, voice in the head, symptoms, illness of mind that I used to live and that I have been diagnosed and that have been my world for a very long time. Um, so, um, if we look at um, how I have actually realized that within when we have such a thought as suicidal voice in the head, you might call it, or pictures or film screens, and we see these hallucinations or pictures or drama or trauma, we see Hollywood created movies that we see in our mind box, in our imagination of suicide or of similar ideas of mind. The big idea is to not fall for that concept of killing oneself. First of all, if we do kill ourselves, we end up with more trouble than what we already had. We drag with us what we had plus the suicide, and then, bigger job ahead, wherever that might be. So, when standing on this brink, this lonely platform, this isolated area of voice in the head, of all sorts of chaotic and disturbing, you might call it culture, and just being so depressed and lonely and ostracized and scared and paranoid and angry and feeling suicide. The big idea and the reason, and you know, it is because the reason why we experience this, that I find so far, is that there is on the other, in a other part of me, there is something that I'm not living. So that when something of me is screaming that it's dying, it's because there is something that I'm not living. So the suicidal thoughts, voices, backshots, noise, pain, friction, drama, trauma of mind, when that occurs, it is a signal to self that, hey, you are not living your potential. Hey, you are not creating yourself. Hey, you are not learning anything new. Hey, you are not embracing life and learning and expanding and growing and creating, with emphasis on learning and creating, expanding self. Whenever we feel belittled and depressed and suicidal and just feel like, I'm gonna kill myself, whenever such we have some voices or such thing occur within our mental world and environment, it is because there are parts of us that are being killed within our mental world. There are parts, units, potentials of us that is being strangled within us, within our life and living. There are parts of us that are not allowed to grow. There are parts of us that are not being nurtured. There are parts of us that are not being looked after and see to that it could be, and that one can create and grow and expand and learn something new, perhaps take a chance and challenge oneself and really, yeah, I want to go for that theater play and do an acting show, or learn a new writing course, or do painting class. I want to do gardening, I want to do choir, swimming. I want to learn about automobiles and engines. There are so many things that we are, you know, whenever we have this experience of feeling so deprived and so isolated and, you know, just tormented within of suicidal thoughts, because there is something within us that we are struggling from not living that potential, from not living that, however tiny that might be. And you know, the empowerment potential within that is by force just as large as the force of emotion and burden and trauma and suicidal thoughts are in equivalent. The force and the strength, you might call it, the extent of the thoughts and the voices and the pain in the head and the suicidal pictures, the extent and the force of that is the exact same extent and force of our creative, learning, expanding, understanding, learning potential of something new, something we are not living, we are struggling it, and it is dying within us, and therefore we have these voices, therefore we have this experience, and what call it desire of suicide, which is our body, ourselves, our minds, our beingness, telling us that, hey, there is something within you that is dying. You should see to this. You should challenge yourself. You You should be creative. You should learn and expand yourself. So that, you know, when we hear the words of suicide alarm ring in our heads, it is because there is something hidden within us that we are not living. We are refusing to live it. We are denying it and suppressing it and just, I don't want to do that. I don't have the balls for that. Somebody else can do that. I would like to do it, but I don't dare to. I don't want to. I don't have the strength. I don't have the capacity, whatever. The reason why most people experience voices of suicide is because we are not challenging ourselves. It's because we are not living. I mean, the call for suicide in our heads, the voice in the head, is a voice from within us, from within the self, that is calling out, I'm dying, I'm being strangled, I'm being hurt, you're killing me, stop it. Because of that point of not living something. So, you know, many people, you could call it, choose to end their lives, and it's tragic and it's dumb, because they don't dare to live their potential. They don't dare to live that challenge, that creative, learning new self. And because they refuse and deny and suppress and ignore and eventually abandon and strangle that potential, that creative life force within, that could grow and evolve to something magnificent, a huge, beautiful something. Because we are denying it, suppressing it, abandoning it, isolating it, strangling it, hurting it with our emotions, and so on and so on and so on. We are refusing to let it be a part of us. We are refusing to nourish it, to go for that creativity, to go for that learning, new skill, whatever it might be. And you know, here's a little parallel. I think that is why very many people with schizophrenia and mental illness have often been painters or writers or mathematics, you know, because they choose to live for as long as they do, and then they choose to work on painting because they have this driving force within them to create something. They want to create. They want to be active and do something and be artistic or mathematic or poetic or imaginative, you know? So they paint and they make drama and they write poetry and solve mathematics because they hear that alarm bell in their head that, hey, I'm a creative potential. I'm a learning potential. Please see me. I'm a learning potential. I want to grow. I want to blossom. Please don't kill me. I'm a part of you. Parts of us, parts of our beingness, parts of our nature that is longing to be nurtured, that is longing to be heard and expanded upon. And that might be many different things. Learn to swim, learn to fix your bike, paint. It could be making music, it could be anything. If we can see that and sit down with a pen and paper and write down in honesty, okay, I'm experiencing suicidal thoughts here. I'm writing this down. I'm experiencing suicidal thoughts. What's it all about? What's personality? Something to that. It's the circumstances, the culture, and all that. and then try to find what is that life force within this that is screaming at you. Where is that surrounding at? Where is that culture, that nature of self, where one is experiencing this, being suffocated, being strangled, being suppressed, and kill it within? How can I find this potential within myself? And this might be hard for people to go through, to realize this. Maybe particularly for people with mental illness. And people with autism or mental illness have a tougher time in life, no doubt about it. I can assure you of that. But the reward of choosing life and choosing to evolve, to expand, to learn, to create is thus greater. And yeah. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm an ordinary guy working my way through my schizophrenia. So this is something I picked up about suicide and that kind of mindset, and some solutions to this. If you're suffering from suicidal thoughts, please contact a professional and open up in honesty, in self-honesty. What is going on within you? What are the stories? What are the symptoms? And seek help and find common sense within that, and realize that when you experience voices or thoughts talking about suicide and death and so on, it is parts of you that is being strangled from yourself, for you not living your full potential, for you not learning, not creating, not growing, not expanding in your life of something of interest, a hobby, education, work. It could be anything. So yeah, that is some of my creativity for today on the topic of suicide. So if you have any comments on this, please feel free to ask me questions. And for me, self-forgiveness has been the ultimate tool to learn and understand and alter my ways. So check out Destiny if you really want to go investigate self and life, responsibility. So yeah, breathe. I think that's all for me now. Thank you and enjoy.